Hi, Mesopotamian art really deals with the art of the Middle East, the Fertile Crescent, the Nile-Euphrates Valley, and also near the Mediterranean where there was water, but the weather was good, it was warm. Here you see an image of King Tut, one of the gold statues and death masks of the infant, the child king, that was found in the 1920s in Egypt and is a remarkably preserved piece, as this was one of the few tombs that was undisturbed. Here you see a human-headed winged lion, Imasu, from the Northwest Palace of Ammasonapal II, and a caliph, and it was, of course, Middle Eastern, part human, part animal. Here you see part of the actual aspects of where the Ishtar Gate was supposed to be. The Ishtar Gate was supposedly one of Nebuchadnezzar's openings to his grand palace. Quite beautiful, and you get a strong sense of what that gate must have looked like today, a recreation of it, of course, in a museum. And then following this, we see the actual palace, or what remains of the palace, of Xerxes and Darius, the two Persian kings. Today, modern Iran, but in Persia there was a great kingdom. Their palaces were razed to the ground, completely destroyed by Alexander's armies. But the Persians had a fantastic empire that threatened almost all the ancient world. And here you see the ground plan of the Xerxes and Darius palaces as they must have existed 3,000 years ago. Then we have the large scale of the Code of Hammurabi, which is probably one of the great monuments to early laws. It was the first time laws were laid out for people to see, so they could actually look at the laws themselves. And of course, Hammurabi was the great king who actually created laws for the people. Here you see a group of suppliants that are going to the palace at Persepolis of Xerxes and Darius, and they're actually providing gifts for the kings, the very mighty kings of their time. And here you see the people that are providing plants, flowers, food, gold, all kinds of tribute to Xerxes and Darius, because again, the Persian Empire was a fantastic empire of its time. Now we're going to take a look at the empire of the Nile. And as you can see Giza near where the Nile runs into the ocean. You can see the Red Sea off to the right. You can see where Akhenaten is, the home of the pharaoh Akhenaten. You can see where the ancient Memphis was. Here you see the Rosetta Stone, very famous stone used by translators, actually discovered by Napoleon's army in the little town of Rosetta. And this was a stone that actually had Greek, Demotic, and hieroglyphic on it. And of course, immediately, because you can see here's the translations, ancient Egyptian, Demotic, and Greek, because scholars knew Greek and they knew a little bit of Demotic, they could finally decipher ancient hieroglyphics, which had been a mystery to scholars for almost 2,000 years. And here we have the Rosetta Stone, as you see it today in the British Museum, usually completely swamped by children and by people the entire time that they're there. Now you see the Great Pyramids of Giza, which are the largest pyramids in the world. There are 3 of them that still exist. Of the great 7 wonders of the old world, the Pyramids of Giza are the only existing of the 7 wonders. The others, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, the Statue of Zeus, the Colossus of Rhodes, all perished centuries ago. At the forefront of the Pyramids of Giza, you also see the Sphinx, a half lion, half man figure. The nose, you can get a sense of the size of the pyramids here from the people in the foreground. See them standing in front of the Sphinx, but standing in front of the pyramid. It's amazing that you can actually climb those steps of the pyramid, and it's quite a climb. But the Sphinx actually did have a nose, but one of Napoleon's troops shot the nose off, target practicing with it back in the 19th century. But it's really remarkable that these stone monuments have lasted as long as they have. And as you can see here, you begin to have monuments to the actual pharaohs. This is Pharaoh Mycenaeus and Queen Kolomtramtre. And as you can see from them, they have the first foot forward, which illustrates the royal stance. This is another pharaoh from Giza. This is Shephren. And as you can see, the seated pose is a seated pose that is retained for pharaohs for thousands of years. Later, you'll look at a statue of Ramesses, and he's sitting in the same position several thousand years later. This is a more realistic style of Egyptian sculpture. This is a scribe, and this is an interesting sculpture of the scribe seated. And this is also another picture of a pharaoh watching a hippopotamus hunt at the tomb of Tai. And apparently this is to illustrate the pharaoh in all of his glory and power, supervising a hunt by his fellow workers. This is the marvelous funerary tomb of Queen Hesesiporta, and this is from the funerary temple of the 18th dynasty. A massive temple. And as you can see again, the people in front of the temple illustrate that the temple is still in use, and people can still go and visit the queen's tomb. Still built into the side of a stone mountain, so it's kept forever. Here is the Ramesses II. 4 statues of Ramesses II in his various guises. These are 2 of the statues, but here he's in the same seated position as Shephren 2,000 years earlier. And there's a close-up here, so you can get a little sense of what Ramesses looked like. Very powerful, very strong face, giving people a great sense that they're in the good hands of a good leader by these large, gigantic statues. And interestingly enough, when they built the Anwar Dam, where these statues were located, built into a stone wall or a stone mountain, the Egyptian architects actually cut the stone statues up into sections and then had them reassembled away from the dam so they would not be flooded with water like the rest of the valley. This is a good example of Egyptian art, and this illustrates, again, another scene hunting in the marshes with the pharaoh and nobleman. And you can see the beautiful coloration. This is a beautiful piece of papyrus that was fortunately preserved, and this shows the home and garden of the scribe Nakhti, and it's beautifully preserved, and I believe this is in the British Museum, but you can see the hieroglyphic, and also you can see another piece. This is from the Metropolitan Museum, and I believe this one is another presentation and offering from people to the actual pharaohs, and you can see the beautiful coloration, which is very well preserved. Here you see Egyptian players and dancers. Up until recent years, people weren't really aware that Egypt had a beautiful history of music and dance, as well as Greece and other cultures did. But we've been discovering more deciphered pieces of art that, again, show colorful terracotta and painting and, acrylics that are not really acrylics, but watercolors that illustrate that there was singing and dancing. This is Akhenaten, a very severe sculpture. Akhenaten was the sun god. He was one of the sun pharaoh, and he is associated with the sun because he believed in this idea of monotheism, and he tried to create this idea of monotheism for the people, but he was not very well received by the people who still believed in polytheistic gods. And here you see these little babies who look almost like aliens, don't they? Sitting on the lap of Akhenaten and his bride. This is Queen Nefertiti, considered one of the great beauties of the ancient world, up until, of course, Cleopatra, another one of the great Egyptian beauties. Nefertiti here in a very realistic sculpture, frieze of her head, very beautifully rendered. And once again, another image of King Tut from King Tut's tomb. Most of the burial materials are left in the British Museum. The British plundered much of Egypt during the early 20th century, and here you're going to see a recreation of what it was likely that King Tut looked like without all of his material over him. From his bones, we have reconstructed what the boy king might have looked like, and it's very likely that he looked something like this when he was alive, but he died early of some probably dread disease. This is the kingdom of Nubia, Nubia is the famed kingdom that was written about, but there was very little record of it, but now we're uncovering more archaeological evidence. Nubia was a kingdom of Upper Africa that ran into Egypt. And here you see the kingdom of Kush, another kingdom of the African dynasties. And these were mostly wiped out by Western settlers who wanted to destroy all records of African society and claim that there had been nothing. You'll hear in the background the music of the Beatles, and the Beatles actually did Tomorrow Never Knows, a song from 1966. It's actually based on the Tibetan Book of the Dead, but the Egyptians actually had their own Book of the Dead, which also had rules for transferring to the afterlife.